薄いのアホ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップカードレディー。
Shojo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, July 23rd, 2018, we'll be shoujo and telling about the first 11 volumes of Bananafish by Akimi Yoshida. To be clear, that means we're covering about 58% of the series because there's 19 volumes. That's how math works. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Marion. Hi, Marion.
Hi.
Would you like to give it? I know you are a Bananafish superfan. That's about the only thing I know about you. So would you like to say what else you're into?
So I like shoujo a lot, but yeah, I like both shoujo and shonen. You know, the action stuff, fights, and the over the top drama and shoujo manga. So yeah, I think Bananafish is a pretty good combination of the both things. So
Well, would you like to summarize what Bananafish is about? What the ding dong is a Bananafish?
oh my god, Bananafish is it's so much. How can you even describe that series?
I don't know. That's
Okay.
why I kicked it to you.
Okay, so it's basically a war story between the mob and street gangs, where Ash Lynx is trying to fight this mafia boss, Papadino goes in to gain his freedom, and everything starts when he discovers Bananafish, and yeah, that's pretty much the basic plot.
And Bananafish is some type of drug. At first, you're misled to believe that it's a person, but I'm like, come on, it's not a person.
Yeah, a person of an organization or something like that, but it's actually a drug. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a drug that manipulates people, so that's fun. And so, why are you such a super fan of this series?
Well, Bananafish basically has a lot of stuff that I usually like in fiction. It has drama, it has action, it has gunfights, it has knife fights, it has a battle of wits, it has romance, it has compelling relationships between all kind of characters, friendships. It has gangs. It has a lot. It has comedy. It has everything. But you can find practically everything in Bananafish.
That's true, I agree. And when did you first read Bananafish?
The first time I read it was 2 years ago, but I have known about this series since forever. Basically, I think I have known about it for 10 years now. But I wasn't ready back then, so yeah, I read the first time I read it was 2 years ago. Then I read it again last year, and now I'm reading again.
Right, because now there's an anime, so now we're all into it, right? I did not know about this series before hearing about the anime, and then seeing you your Twitter account is basically a Bananafish Twitter account at this point.
It's Banana Twitter at this point.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, Marion seems like Marion's really hype about this. This must be a big thing. I should get in on this, right? So then I have only just read it for this podcast, so everybody is aware. I am the Bananafish noob. And I would like to clarify that Bananafish as a manga is actually quite old. It ran initially from 1985 to 1993, I want to say. Is that right? I don't know. Four? Okay. Close enough. Somewhere in that range. 10 years back in the day. But there's a recent anime that is currently airing, and Viz Media had published this series initially all the way back in 1999 initially, and then ran it again in 2004 or something. And I was very afraid that I would have to tell everybody that this series is out of print and it's very hard to get. I only got it through the library, but Viz did announce recently that they are re-releasing it. Well, by the time this comes out, it will definitely be available. And the anime is currently airing in North America. It's available on Amazon. I have not watched the anime. I know you've been watching the anime, which is good because people want to know your feelings about animated manga. But yeah, so I have not watched it on Amazon. I do have to admit that I despise Amazon as a corporation, so I do not use Amazon for anything.
Fair.
And hence I will not watch the anime until it's on Blu-ray or something, I guess. So we are now going to spoil all the things. So yeah, if you don't want to be spoiled, at least go watch some anime or read some of the manga. But again, we are not covering the whole thing, so if you're cool with half series spoilers, come join us if you have not read it. Yeah, so I wanted to start off by giving more historical context for this series because I think it's very much a product of its time, I think.
Yeah.
And do you wanna start off with that?
Yeah, I mean, Bananafish is extremely 80s. It's impossible to separate it from the time in which it was written. That's one of the reasons that everyone is like, why is the anime set in modern day time? This is so 80s. It's impossible to do this in modern time, and they're doing it anyway, and it still feels 80s. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's extremely 80s. You may have noticed that already.
Yeah, this style is very oh wow, hi. But I think it's also a product of its. I think it's very good at this. It is both a product of its literary time and of a political moment, I think, too. So I wanted to clarify. I think people also see Bananafish and they're like, why? What's a bananafish? That's a weird name, right? Is that a common sentiment you see?
I had to admit that it's weird to me when people react to the name because I have known about it for so long. I don't even remember how I react to it. So to me, it's a common name for me by now. So when people are
Yeah,
like,
you're
"What's
just that's a
Bananafish,
normal
man?"
thing.
It's like, yeah, it's like, what? Okay, whatever.
It's so good in emojis, you just take a banana and a fish. It's great. I love it. But so I wanted to clarify that Bananafish actually does have a longer storied history. It is taken from a J.D. Salinger story called Perfect Day for Bananafish. And there's lots of literary references throughout this series. Ash initially says, in volume 1, he's like, Salinger, I'm more of an Ernest Hemingway boy. And I was like, Ash, you are my new best friend. I also love Ernest Hemingway, and we are buddies.
I had the opposite reaction.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, I'm familiar with Hemingway, and it was like, why go read Happier Things, please? Why would you read that? Aren't you suffered enough?
I mean, yeah. So having both of those references means you should definitely know what you're getting into with Bananafish because that means it's going to be very, very tragic.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some mentions of Stephen King too at some point.
Oh, yeah. They start mentioning Stephen King a lot by the end because they're like, this sounds like we're in a Stephen King novel. And I'm like, are you in a Stephen King novel? Wouldn't it be great if Stephen King started tweeting about Bananafish? Oh my God, I would die. But so the Bananafish reference in the Salinger story, a bananafish is a fish that goes in a hole and then eats a bunch of bananas and then gets so fat that it can't get back out of the hole, so it dies. And yeah, so that's the story you're getting into, y'all. And the specific Hemingway references that happen throughout are about the Snows of Kilimanjaro, which is a story about a guy who has an infection while he's trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but people can't come rescue him, so he dies, but his spirit transcends to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro where the legendary leopard is. And I'm like, okay, oh boy, I see where this is going. But yeah.
And the way Bananafish mentions a perfect day for Bananafish is supposedly to say that when Bananafish is the fish of death, and when you come across it, you want to die. And that's a good description of the drug, actually.
Yeah, it definitely is people are like, oh my God, I know I'm controlled by this drug, so please kill me. So that's the only way I can escape. It's dark. Also, it's a queer story from the 80s, so I mean, dark. Nothing ever goes well for queer stories in the 80s.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And then the only other brief thing I wanted to mention historical wise is that since it is about, so there's also the whole setup is that It's kind of about some or not POWs, but about some veterans who served in the Vietnam War. And that's how they first heard about Bananafish. And so, it's definitely making the overt connection between the war on drugs, which, gets started around 1970s, 1980s time, and actual war. And I definitely think it's dealing with, a lot of street gang violence leads to PTSD, especially with Ash and all this sexual abuse as well. It's a dark manga, guys.
Yeah, and I think the literary connections are pretty neat because when you think about it, Bananafish itself, it's a war story, and Ash feels like a soldier, and a lot of the times he even feels like a veteran himself with the way he deals with his pain and his trauma.
Yeah, that boy's killed a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you think about it, he was pretty much forced into a position when he has to fight to survive. That's why I say he feels pretty much like a soldier in a war, like he either kills or gets killed. And it's pretty heavy because he's just a 17-year-old that just want to be free and have a normal life, and instead he's fighting against the mob and
Yeah.
yeah, and
Oh, Ash. Yeah. By the end, he's 18 years old.
yeah, he's 18 now. Yeah.
So he's no longer a minor, which is, bad. But for him, but
And yeah.
yeah. And then there's also specific Cold War references that they make at some point in reference to like that's why they're using the drug. They're like really paranoid about Russians and everything. I was like, this feels a little too on the nose now. I don't know. Are we out of the 80s? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of mention of the government wanting to fight against the communists and so on. And when Max and Ash are learning about what Bananafish is, the first thing that comes to Max's mind as an example is, oh yes, that's what the Russians did when they wanted to send spies and so on. And that's so extremely 80s.
It also feels kind of extremely 2018 right now. See, that's why they're making an anime. They know.
History repeats itself.
Yeah, history is repeating itself. So they're like, hey, it's a good time to do this.
Yeah, that's actually what I think. Like, you know what? Bananafish might be extremely 80s, but it's totally applicable to 2018 still. Pretty sad. This is pretty sad, actually.
There were definitely some moments where I was like, "You've cut too deep, Bananafish. You've cut me so much." Like, there's the one background graffiti that's like, "Don't you love our Western ways?" And I was like, "Too deep, Bananafish."
Yeah,
I hurt.
No, whenever someone asks if Bananafish is irrelevant, I always think of Ash in that panel when he's like, "If you ask me, the White House can go screw itself," and it's like, yeah, very much.
Yeah,
still playable.
He is correct. But I guess we should get into who all these characters are. There are a lot of characters, so I don't know how we're gonna like choose which ones are more important. But Ash is obviously very important. So you wanna explain what Ash's deal is?
It's a lot. Okay, so Ash is basically a survivor of child sexual abuse and child pornography and human trafficking. It's a lot. He was bought when he was like 11. Papadino bought him when he was 11, and he was treated like a sex slave, and he was forced into pornography. But as soon as Dino realized that Ash has potential, that he has brains, he's like, hey, you know what? Maybe this is a human being after all. And he started to train him, and to train his mind and his body. He like teaches him the art of war. He teaches him how to use guns, how to fight. If you're familiar with superheroes, Ash is basically a street-level vigilante. He has the strength, he has the skills, he has everything. He's like a superhero. Everyone compares when people compare him to Rambo and Terminator, it's hilarious, but it's accurate,
It's definitely accurate. There's a point where he's like, I have strapped myself with machine guns and I'm gonna blow up this whole compound. Yo, what's up? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I still think about that part when when they're like, he has a grenade launcher.
I know, right?
It's so
He
it's so
literally does.
good. It's
Oh
so
my
good.
goodness.
No, at some point you're like, you know what? He has to make them pay. I don't care if you give this boy laser beams. You can make him an X-Men if you want to, but make it happen. They have to pay. Because
Yeah.
I mean, his skill is kind of like proportional to the amount of pain he goes through, so it feels justified, you know.
Yeah, no, I was so because the initial story you get about Ash is definitely about Dino and the human trafficking and the sexual abuse from him, and then I was like, wow, that's already so dark. And then you go to this is like volume 2 or 3, but you go to his hometown and you hear his dad talk to him. This was the moment that's like blew my mind. Is the scene where they're talking with his dad, and his dad's like, yeah, so he had a baseball coach who was also a pedophile, and Ash was 7 and raped by this guy. And we went to the police, and the police were like, well, you don't have proof, slash, you probably seduced this very much older man,
Oh
so
no.
we're not going to help
Yeah.
you. And then Ash's dad gives the advice to Ash that he's like, well, if we can't stop this abuse, then at least make him pay you, like in money, I guess, or whatever, like favors, something for your sexual services. And that is apparently what keeps Ash alive, because then they find out that the baseball coach like murders the children that he's sexually molested, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so dark.
Yeah, but that was the moment that, I mean, when I first read Bananafish, that was a moment that I realized that this was something special. This is not messing around. I mean, it treats rape culture for what it is. How many times have we heard this? I mean, as women, how many times have we heard this? Like, maybe it's your fault, but how were you dressing? What were you telling to him? Like, they always, I mean, this mentality of victim blaming. And you have an 8 years, and he was like 7 or 8 years old. And how can I mean, you have a police blaming a kid for, I mean, they blame a kid, and I can't
I
even,
know, it's so
I
bad.
get so frustrated. I can't even think what to say. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It's so obviously, how would you blame a child for doing something like that? It's so in the nose, but it happens. It happens to women from all ages, and it happens to men too. And it's Banana Fish just doesn't mess around when it addresses abuse.
I know, well, I guess we can talk about it here. Yeah, it's just like Bananafish definitely feels like something, like it's very applicable to now in the way that we're having a cultural moment. Like, obviously, it's always happened. That's what Bananafish proves. And I love that Bananafish, it has problems, but it definitely never shies away from taking that very seriously. In the way that shoujo manga, normally can have, it doesn't treat certain things with the gravitas that it deserves. But Bananafish is not one of those. It definitely takes abuse very seriously and is able to humanize both sides, but it definitely is always like, abuse is wrong. This is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, and even if Ash is the kind of person that gets over it fast, I mean, he acts like he gets over it fast, but he's never truly over it. I mean, even if he's incredibly resilient, you see how his abuse affects him in different and real ways. It's extremely dark, but it feels honest.
I mean, it's just all the characters feel so real and good, and like, even when they're
Yeah.
doing bad things, you're like, no.
Yeah, I mean, Banana Fish can, and Banana Fish is absolutely over the top. It goes, I mean, it's a
Definitely.
trip. It's a trip, but the characters themselves feel pretty grounded, pretty real, very compelling and understandable.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to have at least some suspension of disbelief to like get through this story, right? Like, there's a lot of moments where you're like, that seems pretty extreme. Like, I think Ash would be dead by now, but that's okay. Like,
She's basically a superhero, yeah.
Yeah, he's like immune to everything. But so then we have Ash's, foil counterpart is Eiji. He is supposed to be the sweet and innocent boy from Japan, right?
Yeah. Eiji is such a baby. How else can I describe him? He's such a good boy. He's such a pure good boy. He just wants everyone to be, I mean, he just wants to help people, he's such a good boy.
Such a good boy. And he's older than Ash by like 2 years or something.
Yeah, he's 2 years older, and even Eva is like, okay, who's supposed to be older here? But yeah, Eva is, I'm sorry, Heiji. This is hilarious because even, I mean, I don't know if you read the descriptions in the volumes, the character descriptions, but
Oh, I was reading them initially.
there's a mean spread at some point, and they call Eiji Eva and Eva Eiji. I don't know why.
Yeah, there were a lot of misprints in those things. Like they also, like with Max and Jessica, they like mixed up Jessica and Jennifer, and Jessica's Max's like ex-wife, and Jennifer is Ash's mom or whatever. Stepmom.
Yeah, a lot of Jaders. Yeah, there are a lot of mistakes there. Anyway, so Agee, it's a pretty innocent boy. He has lived a pretty normal and sheltered life, and he's suddenly in front of all the cows and everything. I mean, he's just suddenly thrown in the middle of the war between the gangs and the mafia and so on. But he's still such an innocent and pure boy, and he never really changed that part of him. And that's his character strength, that goodness, and he has. I mean, the ability he has to soothe others and understand the pain others goes through, and so on.
Yeah, no, his definitely there's very much a like America versus Japan view that's going on here. So AG comes over. What is he supposed? Is he just like helping eBay take pictures? I was kind of confused about the setup. It's like eBay, who is his like mentor, and AG come over from Japan, and they're like, we want to do a story on American youth gangs. I guess they were supposed to team up with Max, and Max was supposed to write it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much an excuse. I mean, even wanted to come to America to write the story, and he knew Max from before already. So Max was like the connection he had to come over and write that. And AJ was depressed, so he wanted to bring him over. So the whole camera assistant thing is just an excuse to bring him with him.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so they like come over and they're like, yeah, we'll just like go take some pictures of, Ash's gang and Ash, and the police like know Ash, and they're like, yeah, Ash is cool, like nothing will happen, it's fine. And then AG like immediately gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
And Ash like immediately falls in love with him. I think that's accurate.
I mean, there's definitely mutual attraction from the first moment they interact. I mean, there's such a difference between Ash and Agee, and that's one of the things I did that attract them to each other at the first moment. Like Agee was drawn to Ash as the untamable wild Ash, and Ash was attracted to Agee's innocence. I mean, he immediately lets him hold his gun. And
yeah, he's like, you can't do anything with this. You're so innocent, sure.
Yeah, and then Skill's like, there are people who have lost their hand just for asking, and yeah, and he just gives his gun to AG, and that's he doesn't even know AG yet, but that already tells you just how much, I mean, how trustworthy AG is, how innocent he looks.
Yeah, and it definitely points out the difference between this is a stereotype. I'm going to admit this, but the stereotype of America being like this wild place where even in the cities everybody has a gun and we're just like rampaging around and like the Wild West out there or whatever. And then in Japan they're like, you're not allowed to have guns in Japan. So they're all innocent and all these things, and I mean they are currently Japan after World War II is kind of very influenced by American culture, but we've also, they're not allowed to have a standing army and all those things. Like we are supposed to be their strength and all those things. And so Bananafish somehow is like, you know what, I'm gonna tackle those. I'm gonna tackle that dynamic. And there's definitely a mutual, it's not like, oh, America is bad and Japan is great or vice versa. There's some mutual admiration going both ways where Eiji's like, Ash has seen so many things and is so much stronger than me and all these things. And Ash, of course, looks at him and is like, damn, I wish I, lived in Japan. He definitely says that at some point. He's like, I wish I grew up in Japan. It's all, you don't have any bad things that happen there, apparently. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting because I've been to Japan a few times, and there was definitely a conversation I had with somebody just at breakfast once. Some guy sitting next to me and my friend noticed that we were American, and he was like, oh, in Japan, culture is just so like stifling. Like he felt so stifled by the lack of individuality and like all these things. And we were like, interesting, because I think I also have that mutual admiration for Japan where I'm like, oh, it's so like people won't steal stuff from you in Japan. Like if you lose your wallet, they'll just leave it there and wait for you to like return and all these things. So it's interesting to see those things played out in this manga through these two characters 30 years ago or whatever. Math.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ibe pretty much say that Eiji was suffocating in Japan, that he needed to get out of there,
Oh yeah, they do say that at some point, and they're like, because he's supposed to be some sort of prodigy pole vaulter.
Yeah, he was a pretty good pole vaulter, but he has an injury, so
yeah, and then he never got back into it.
Yeah, and he got depressed after that. Yeah.
But then he gets to make Ash fall in love with him by pole vaulting to safety, pole vaulting to rescue in this Key Volume 1 moment.
Yeah, that was a pretty good scene. Yeah, and it's mentioned too that when Agee comes to America, that he comes alive again. That it was definitely a good idea to bring him over to him, and that his bond with Ash really did a lot for him, and that how Ash is basically the best friend he has ever found, and so on. They use a lot the word friend to describe this too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, you prefer to call them like platonic lovers? Is that what I read?
Yeah, I mean, it is a romance. What happens between them is pretty much a romance, but it's a sexual. It is present as something as sexual, and it's a dynamic that's very strongly based on friendship. I mean, they are each other's best friends, but when you hear characters being like, "Yeah, they're friends," it just feels weird because when you
Yeah.
it feels weird because when you see them interact and when you see what they mean to each other, it just feels like, I mean, it feels like they're a lot more than that. So it's weird.
Yeah, no, half the time it sometimes feels like they're being broy and like jabbing at each other, and then other times I'm like, are you guys flirting with each other? Because I think you are. And they hug and stuff. Like they're bros.
Yeah, there are definitely scenes where they're absolutely flirting with each other. I always laugh at that part in the mention arc when they're basically fighting for their lives, and Ash stops in a moment and he's like, "Am I scaring you?" And he's like, "Nah, of course not." And, "Are you serious? You two idiots! You're gonna die here. Stop flirting right now."
Yeah. So many Ash and Eiji moments. I'm sure we will list them later because they're all so good. But I guess we should talk about. I guess Max is he's a big deal, right? He's a guy.
The central characters are pretty much Ash, Agee, Max, and Eva.
Yeah, we can do Max and Eva at the same time because they're both old farts, right? Is that was the way that they were described?
Yeah,
by Ash.
Yeah, they're both dads too. They're pretty much dads to Ash and Eiji.
Yeah, Daddy-o, what's up?
Oh my god, I can't believe I say that. Like, there are some translation choices that are like very outdated in a bad way, but there are others that are just gold. They're hilarious.
They're so funny.
Yeah, and you may have noticed that sometimes you will get lines that are censored, and then you will get just curses in the same volume.
Yeah, I was very confused by that, to be honest. I was like, what is going on, Viz? What have you done?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even know what's supposed to be, because if you research that, you get info that supposedly the full version was the censored one, and then the 2014 translation was supposed to be uncensored, but that's a lie. All of them have curses, real curses, and all of them had lines that are censored, like they go mother and at some point, and the next phase you had something like that little fat year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're inventing words at that point, and or what in the ding dong is going on.
Yeah, no, when I got to that, I was like, wait, aren't I supposed to be in the uncensored land? Like, I'm reading a unflipped like version here. It's like volume 10 or 11. Like, what's going on? Why is he still saying ding dong? I'm so confused.
Yeah, and the full version only did like 5, 6, maybe 7 volumes. So after that, it's all the 2014 version. So yeah, I'm not. I have no idea what's happening there. Yeah, but some translation. I mean, some choices are so funny. Like it makes Bananafish special in a way, but then you get to some translation choices like you get all those blurs and so on, and it's like, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of slurs that get slung around, and I'm like, I don't know if we're cool with that in the 2018s, but all right.
Yeah, and I can't speak for the whole manga, but I'm pretty sure that there's a line when Ash is like, "What are you, gay?" And the translation for some reason went with the F word, and yeah, it happened.
Yeah, I don't know why they went with that, but one of the less good things about Bananafish, certainly. But yeah, so getting back to Max and eBay, the old farts. eBay is like Eiji's handler. He's a photographer coming over to do a story from Japan. He's very much he's like just older Agee and more worthless, I guess, but he tags along with Max normally, and Max like, emboldens him a lot of the time, I think. Max is a Vietnam War veteran who is now a journalist. And I kind of love Max because I love the exchange that he had with Ash at one point about Ash being like, Watergate is like a thing of the past. Journalism is dead and the pen isn't mightier than the sword. And Max is like, I'll show you, you little punk. I still believe. And again, that felt very real for 2018. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, Bananafish is still so relevant, sadly. Yeah. But seriously, the dynamic between Max and Ash, it's gold. I just love when they're acting like they're supposed to be father and son. It's hilarious and it's endearing at the same time.
Yeah, they know each other well, and they have a fairly contentious relationship in the beginning where Max is asked by, I believe, by Charlie and the Inspector Jenkins, the two main cop people, to protect Ash in prison when he gets thrown in there for a little stint. And so, they ask Max to look after him, and he's like, "This one's a wild one. Like I can't watch after this guy. He's crazy. He's gonna get himself killed, get me killed." And then eventually Max is like, "No, I can't leave him alone. He's so compelling, and like I have to protect him, and we're in this together. We're both researching Bananafish, trying to figure out what is a bananafish."
And it's so funny because Max is supposed to be the older one, but Ash is the one that's always like, I wouldn't say that he patronizes him, but he's, regularly making fun of him and of his innocence, I will say, kind of. Like, I mean, Max is kind of a idealist person, and Ash has gone through a lot, so he doesn't have time for that kind of thing anymore. He's definitely not an optimist person. So
Yeah. I don't know if I would call it innocence in the way that like Agee is very innocent, but I
no,
would say
definitely
that
not.
yeah, like I think it's that Max still believes in the power of bureaucracy. He's like, cops will help you, and me writing a story in Newsweek will change the world. And Ash is like, I don't have time to go through all these channels and all this nonsense. Like, somebody has a gun at my head right now.
Yeah, I mean, Max is more of a dreamer rather than innocent, actually. Eiji is the one that, like, he is the personification of innocence, basically. But but Max is more of a dreamer. Like you say, he still believes. He wants to believe.
Yeah, he wants to believe in like some goodness and like that justice will be served through systems. And Ash is like, no, that's
Been
not
there,
true.
done that. It doesn't work.
God, yeah. But they have a good, they work well together. They sometimes meet up and fight some bad guys together, and then they go off again to do their respective parts in this role. Where Ash mostly kills more people, and Max actually just like writes stories for Newsweek and tells the larger public about this big scandal that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Ash might like make fun of Max for believing that the pen is mightier than the sword, but if you think about it, Ash is basically the sword and Max is the pen, and they work together to get results.
Yeah, they work together, exactly.
I mean, Ash is basically the pen and the sword, but he just is in a position with being the sword works more of the time.
Yeah, Ash does some research. He goes to the library. He's a literary boy. He reads Hemingway.
Yeah, like you say, Ash is basically a superhero because he's not only super strong and have a lot of skills, he's super smart as well. Like, he's unbelievably smart. He has an IQ of 200, and he's like, compared to Einstein, that's how smart that boy is.
Yeah, he rants about math sometimes. And I'm like, are you saying words, Ash? All right, that's cool. Like, I believe you, Ash. Anything that Ash says, I'm like, yeah, Ash is right. I believe that guy. But he has some worthy foes. There's a lot of mobsters trying to kill him. Yes, we should talk about. Well, okay, we should talk about his ally, I guess, Shorter, who does die, unfortunately. He gets banana fished. Can we make that into a verb? Is that like a thing? Yeah, that's a thing. Banana fished. He has to take the drug. Actually, okay, throughout that whole saga, so there's a plot point where they're like, Dino's people, like Arthur, have taken Agee and Shorter. I guess they were in cahoots with the Lee clan because they're all trying to kill Ash. That's just
yeah. Yeah, that's Bananafish. Everyone wants to kill Ash. That's Bananafish.
That's basically the plot. Because he knows too much and wants to stop Bananafish. But yeah, so like, I thought I had read it all. I was like, oh no, like Agee's gonna get Bananafish and they're gonna tell him to kill Ash. And then I was like, no, fool. They can never kill the main character. They never want to kill the main character. They want to torture the main character. So they Bananafish Shorter to kill Agee. Of course, duh. Have I not read anything? I'm so stupid sometimes.
But they actually wanted to do that. They wanted to give Agee Bananafish to kill Ash at some point. They just, never got to that part.
Yeah, they were like, oh, our plans have gotten derailed. I mean, that would have made sense. It was like, that was the next step of the plan. First, it was like torture Agee and Shorter, and then it was make one of them like kill Ash, right? Like, then he would have suffered enough.
The Shorter thing was so much. He was a genuinely nice guy, and he was literally cornered from all sides. And even in that position, he tried to do his best. He felt guilty for putting Agee in a position where he was. By the way, that part was pretty messed up. They were gonna make Agee one of Dino's toys. So yeah, that's the thing that happened. Yeah, and Shorter feels so bad, and he tries to protect him. That was genuinely so messed up. I mean, I feel bad for Shorter too because he just wanted to do his best. Come on, he was a good friend.
He was a good friend, and so Shorter is part of the like Chinatown like the Chinatown has its own little mafia gang going on because there's a lot about race in Bananafish.
Yeah, the Chinese have their own structure, and Shorter was the leader of the gang that was around Chinatown, but they the answer to the Lee family, which is another mafia.
Yeah, so many people. Also, I'm very sad that Shorter's mohawk got cut off after Volume 1. I was like, no, Shorter, your hair was so cool. Like, what's up?
Yeah, that was a good look.
It was a good look. And then he had to be bald for like 6 volumes.
Honestly, we only enjoyed the mohawk for like 2 chapters.
I know it wasn't very long, but it will always remain in my heart.
Yeah, and he had like a heart.
Yeah, he had a heart
drew
like on his.
he drew
Yeah,
a
yeah,
heart in his face. Yeah, I know it
Yeah.
was cheesy, but it was a good look.
It was so good. But yeah, so Shorter, is like Ash's loyal friend trying to bridge. Because I feel like Ash is also I guess he's trying to bridge the gap between the races, perhaps, putting it nicely. Because there's also a like African American gang that they befriend and all these things. And there's a lot of admiration for Ash across racial lines that happens. And that doesn't stop people from trying to kill him. They kill his friends. But
Look, Bananafish is people want to kill Ash, people admire Ash, and people admire and want to kill Ash. That's
Yeah.
Bananafish. The whole
oh my
thing.
gosh, that really is that banana. But yeah, so Shorter is the thing I think that breaks Ash, though, right? Like his death is what breaks Ash because Ash has to kill him.
Yeah, I mean, Shore was honestly one of the few people that Ash was actually close to. I mean, he was he was such a close friend to Ash, and I mean, they forced Ash to kill him to put him out of the misery. Of course, that's gonna mess him up.
Yeah, I mean, so Shorter gets banana-fished and is ordered to kill Agee, and in the end ends up begging for like Ash to take his life. And Ash is both like, well, there's no cure for this, and also I don't want Agee to die, so I guess I gotta kill this guy. But then he definitely has PTSD over that. Like, Ash has killed a lot of people, but mostly what you see in his nightmares is Shorter recurring and recurring. Like that's the one he doesn't want to kill his friends.
Yeah, and he doesn't think about it that much. It happens in a moment, in a second. Ash is a person that, he just reacts. That's how he survives. And Shore himself begs Ash to kill him, to put him out of his misery. And then in that moment when he's about to kill Eiji, Ash just reacts. He doesn't think about it. And to top all of that, I mean, as if that wasn't messed up enough, he sees Shorter's body after that. I'm pretty sure he sees. I don't even want to describe it.
Yeah, he sees the body, and he also sees his brain later. That's fun. Traumatizing. But yeah, so I mean, leading into one of the topics we had was like a lot of Bananafish is, in the way that we've described, multiple characters are kind of foils for each other, or they work well together, but because they're like opposites and all these things, and they like complement each other. Bananafish is a lot about different styles of leadership, I would say, and Shorter's death is kind of what changes Ash's style of leadership, though, because before killing Shorter, Ash had been sort of a merciful mobster. Like when people in his gang betrayed him or something bad happened, he would let them go. He'd be like, if you come back, I'll murder you or whatever. But like if you run away, it's fine. If I don't see you, we're cool. And then after murdering Shorter, he very much becomes a person who's like, no, I am going to now I have to kill everybody, because if they rat out their friends once, how can we ever trust them again? They're just going to keep doing it. Like he definitely loses some faith in a lot of people, in a lot of things. He loses even more faith in structures. He's just like, I have to literally burn it all to the ground. I got to burn Dino's compound to the ground. I've got to kill all the people in the gang who decided to team up with Arthur and betray me in the end. And there's definitely a existential crisis of like, does that mean that Ash is dead? Like Eiji's like, you are not the Ash that I knew you to be, and Ash really wants to send him back to Japan for a while because he doesn't want Eiji to see how terrible he's become and all these things. And So, Ash used to be a merciful leader, and yeah, I don't know, do you have anything to?
I mean, what happens to Shore definitely marks a difference, but I wouldn't say Ash character changes. It's more like the circumstances change, and I mean the change is more in the kind of circumstances he's in. I mean, before Shorter, Ash was pretty much on the defense. He just react to things that happen, but after Shorter, he wants to take revenge. He wants to fight against Dino. He wants to take down the people who were responsible for what happens to his friend. But I mean, I don't know if I will say that Ash changes much because so the Ash before Shorter was I mean I will say that he was in a position where when it was fine to let people go, but after that he starts a war to end things with other, and he knows that if he lets people go, I mean it kind of comes back to bite him later. And there's definitely some point when he loses himself, I think. So basically he loses himself at some point, in the middle of the war. I mean, he's doing what he feels he should be doing to win against those people, but then AG calls him out on it, and he comes back to earth, to put it in some way. AG, that's one of the roles AG has, in Ash life. I mean, he kind of set Ash back straight when he's losing his way. AG innocence and goodness is fundamental to Ash to keep his own goodness. Like even says, Ash does have a good heart, but sometimes it's kind of hard to remain a good guy in the circumstances he lives.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what people are trying to defend about Ash is that they're like, like you have the cops who are like sympathetic to Ash, and people are like, this is ridiculous, they're criminals and all these things. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, Ash is like this because we've let him down. And if he wasn't in these if we could just remove him from these circumstances, like, he would be such a good boy or whatever, like, but the circumstances are what like make Ash, right? That's
Yeah.
Ash is just a person if he's not a person who wields guns and kills dozens of people at one time.
No, but Ash, I mean, he does show that he is a generally good person, a good and caring person. I mean, you have moments with him when you can see that, but then again, he has his own trauma to deal with and his own circumstances. I mean, it's kind of hard to remain a peaceful, nice guy when everyone and their mothers are trying to kill you.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people trying to stake ownership over everybody else's life. Not just by like killing them, but just being like, Dino is like, I literally own you, Ash. I made you. You owe me something. And Yasui, is that how I don't know how to pronounce his name. But he, goes to oh man, I don't know how to pronounce Chinese names. It's really the problem. Sing, is that how would we pronounce it in Chinese?
I'm not sure. I just call him Sing as well.
Okay, we're gonna go with Sing, and we could be wrong. We apologize. But yeah, so like with Sing, he's like, oh, I got you out of this circumstance. Like, I made sure that the Lees didn't kill you for all this betrayal. And Sing repeatedly is like, no, I don't owe you anything. Like, just because you saved me once doesn't mean you own the rest of my life and all these things. And so it's just a lot of Ash trying to stake ownership over his own circumstances and himself. And
That's the thing too. It's not that just people want to kill Ash. People want to own Ash. Literally wants to own him. He doesn't see Ash as a person. He describes Ash as a creature to be owned, to be tamed, as something that he built. And he's not the only one. Yaoshi also expects Ash to be like a certain way, and Ash just has to deal with all sorts of messed up people, and you kind of wonder how he keeps himself sane in the first place.
oh, well, I'm not. I mean, yeah, I guess there's a whole plot of like them being like, Ash is medically insane, so we're gonna go take him to this mental facility and have him do all these psychiatric tests and all these things. And they're like, Ash isn't insane. That's crazy. You're crazy if you think Ash is insane. Like,
Yeah, Ash is perfectly normal, and
but
yeah,
I'm
they're
like,
like,
is he? I mean, he's not insane,
is he
but
though?
he's definitely got some trauma
I mean,
problems there.
he definitely needs tons of therapy.
Yeah, he definitely needs some therapy. Yeah, I love that Chinese bearded man is he like definitely hates Ash so much. He's just like, I look at you and your like nice bad guy look just pisses me off so much and like all these things. Yeah, and I mean Ash is a good leader because see what makes Ash a good leader is not that he's very good at knowing people. Like he's like, well, this person is going to do this in this situation and therefore he can prepare himself for it. And I think that's, he could use that quality to be super manipulative and all these things, but I don't think Ash wants to own anything, right? He's just like, I want to free everybody from these stupid global drug people's constraints and these gangs and everything. So he uses it to just he's just like, well, you fell into my trap and now I didn't want to take your life, but you have forced me to the circumstances forced me to take you. And all these things. Oh, poor Ash.
Yeah, Ash is pretty good at reading people and situations, and literally all he wants is be free, and he doesn't want anyone to get her. He's a good boy.
He's a good boy who, he became a good boy by seeing the worst of everything.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable that Ash is able to, I don't know, keep a good heart despite everything, because he genuinely still cares about people and he still wants to care. That's one of the reasons he's so drawn to Eiji, to Eiji's goodness. He wants to feel that way too.
That's a good point. It's not, yeah, he like never gives up on the wanting. So like, that's what keeps him going through all this crazy nonsense. Like, just thinking of all the things he did. Like, early on, he was like on top of a truck and he shoots Dino. And then he's wounded and they like jump in the Hudson River and swim away. And I'm like, your wounds didn't get infected? That seems insane. But all right. And just like, then there's the whole like train fight with Arthur and he like murders a whole train full of thugs. I'm like, oh my God, this boy, how? He is a superhero. No. That's how.
the action in Bananafish, it's so insanely over the top, but it's so good. It's so entertaining.
Oh my God, no, yeah, that fight with Arthur and like when they meet underground and like Sing and Kane are there and they're both like, all right, we're gonna just witness this fight and you're gonna fight on even terms. And then the train comes and I'm like, are you serious? Is this seriously happening? They like got the transit, they like hacked into the transit authority of New York to send a train through this tunnel and shoot them all up and they still survive. That's crazy.
And he still wins, he still wins.
I know, and that's why it's crazy.
You can literally throw anything at Ash, and he would still survive. He would still survive. He would find a way.
Yeah, he's like, you don't own me. I will fight you until the end. We'll see who owns who here. Like, oh, God. I owned you to your death. Like, oh, Ash. So good. I just love that also in that scene, all the gangs like follow the train and the police still can't do anything. They're like, I don't know, all these cars are going real fast following a train and all we can do is follow and whatever. I guess the only other, we haven't really talked about Dino as like a person. He's not like that compelling to me, but do you think he's super compelling?
I hate him. That's all I can say about him. I hate him
Really?
every time I see a panel of Dino, I wish the paper could feel pain so I could punch him. That's all I feel about Dino. That's all I feel about him. I hate him. But I mean, I suppose one thing I can say about him as an antagonist is that he does feel like a real threat to Ash. He
Yeah, I
is,
mean, he's a powerful dude.
yeah, he's powerful and he's genuinely smart, and he never underestimates Ash. And we know what happens to people that underestimate Ash. Um, he's he's a very legitimate threat to Ash. So yeah, as he's, I suppose he's good as an antagonist, but he's a terrible person. I hope he dies soon, but I know it won't happen because he's the main villain. I mean, the main antagonist. So yeah, that. But in
Yeah.
Bananafish is constantly wishing Ash would just be happy and free, and constantly wishing Dina would just go to hell already.
Yeah, it's a shame he wasn't in the mansion when Ash blew it all to smithereens. Yeah, Dino just
Yeah.
seems like, if everybody else seems like a compelling a bad guy in that you're like, okay, I see where you're coming from, and I don't just like agree with all your methods and all these things, but like I understand your pain and I see why you want to do something drastic to correct it. Dino just seems like he's just a bad dude. He's into human trafficking of young boys as sex slaves, and I'm like, I don't know that there's a crime that's like worse than that. Like that's a pretty big bad crime.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really want a pedophile to be compelling. Like, it's fine not to relate to Dino. That's actually good.
Yeah, it's just that he's just very much it's a stereotypical very bad villain. I'm like, okay, I guess they exist, but fine. Where it's kind of confusing why people it always confuses me for pure evil characters, like why people follow them. Like, okay, I guess they're all just weird
They're all
evil.
evil.
Yeah, they're
I
all
mean,
just evil.
I mean, look at the art, look at the characters, and tell me that you don't automatically know when someone is evil.
Oh, you
Look at
definitely
the
do.
look at the expressions. Like, they're just pure evil. They have the pure evil look. Like, you literally look at them for 2 seconds and you're like, so you're Dino's man.
Yeah,
It
they got that
just,
like smirk thing going on, and
yeah,
the creepy
yeah.
eyes, and all these things. But yeah, I guess the other two big like thematic things that we've mentioned briefly, but that I wanted to bring up were, so Bananafish is very unique in that, at least from my perspective. I don't know. I'm a shoujo noob. What do I know? But it's a story that's set in America, written by a Japanese author in the 1980s, and it has a lot of different races portrayed and everything. And I was like, this actually, like, I never. I mean, there's a lot of, again, we've discussed, there's a lot of over the topness and stuff, but there is never a moment where I thought that it didn't feel like Yoshida like really understood America and its psyche and the myths about gun culture and all these things, and the fears that plague us normally, that continue to plague us, and like the greatness of us being a quote unquote melting pot. I will not endorse or deny that currently, but just America having a lot of different races and all these things. And I thought it was like, I was like, it's like it's like a fairly respectful representation of America. And what really hit home for me was the moment where I guess Agee and Ash are going somewhere in New York City, like just being a little touristy or something. And Ash is like, Agee, like you're not seeing quote unquote real America. Again, another thing that comes up very frequently in 2018 of like the coasts aren't real America, cities aren't real America. But Ash is like, you've only seen New York City and Los Angeles, and that's like most of America isn't a big city. Most of America is like rural, middle of nowhere nothingness, where people live in these very tiny communities, and I was like, wow, that's just felt so strange to be in a manga, and it felt so real to me.
Yeah, and Eiji is like, oh, so it's a Stephen King
Oh yeah,
novel,
that's
and
where
that
the
feels
Stephen
true
King.
too. And that feels true too because I mean, it's pretty normal for foreigners to just go to to refer to movies or something to have a reference to what real America is and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to like say that this is a perfect representation because you definitely the way that black people were drawn in the 80s, maybe not the best.
I literally can never look past the way black people are drawn. It's just so in your face. They're pretty much racist caricatures, with the big wide mouth and the very unflattering shading. And it's so frustrating because when you look at the art, Yoshida has like five different styles of shading, and she chooses the worst to color the black people's skin.
Hmm.
Like, it's like, how can I make them look worse? And she goes even beyond that to make them look even worse. It's just so jarring to look at them because the rest of the characters look pretty good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, they're all like black people have a lot of different skin tones. That's definitely not represented in this at all. Like, not at all. No. And I mean, I get that it's, a shorthand. Like, everybody who is, I think, supposed to be a white American in this never has their hair colored in at all. Like, you kind of default that they're all blonde or something weird. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, so all the black people are like super super dark, and then all the Chinese gang and Agee and Ebai being Japanese, they all have like dark hair and all these things. I'm like, I get it, you're trying to tell me who's in the what race, but it could be better.
Yeah, and I have no way to confirm this, but I get the feeling that white people who are drawn with the big mouth are supposed to be Latinos.
Mm.
I don't know because I know one dude with the big mouth was like my wife is Marion. I don't know, in some racist joke that they have in
Oh
the
yeah.
jail. That kind of made me think. Wait, so are these people supposed to be Latinos or what?
Yeah, I mean I think that would make sense. It's not There's no like Latino gang that's happening. At least not yet. That I don't know what happens in the last 8 volumes. But
Yeah, that's actually one of the bad parts of Bananafish. I mean, you have Skipper that gets fridge in like the second chapter, the third chapter, I think.
yes, and Skipper was a little black boy that was like Ash's right hand, like task person that he had going on.
Yeah, and he gets immediately killed. And the worst part is that when he gets killed, the framing focuses exclusively on Ash's reaction, and it's like, okay, so Skid wasn't a person. I get it. And then there are mentions of Latino gangs and of Mexicans, but I think you didn't notice this, and I don't blame you because I didn't notice the first time I read it. I read the manga either, but there are mentions of Latino gangs, and we only ever see them when they're getting killed.
Oh.
And then we see the pictures of their bodies
Oh.
in the NYPD. You know that scene when Ash is killing and a bunch of boys, and there's a sniper from the roof that
Oh
tries to
yeah,
get
yeah,
him,
yeah.
and Ash shoots him. Those are the Latinos. Yeah.
Ah, right. I was like, I feel like they were there, but are like so insignificant. I couldn't remember their defining features. But yeah, so I mean, art uses stereotypes to convey race because yeah, it wants to have a shorthand. And I think you had mentioned in some of your write ups that Yoshida is perhaps very same facey. So a lot of times with characters, yeah.
Yeah, look, the best example I can think of is there was a time when I look at Jessica,
And you thought it was
and
Jennifer?
and I no, I thought it was Ash.
Oh,
I was
that's
like,
even
what,
better.
Ash? What happened to your hair, Ash? And then I look at it again, and oh no, wait, that's Jessica.
Oh boy.
That's how same facey you can get.
Yeah, I mean, I had to reread the very beginning that's like in the Vietnam War. I read that several times because I couldn't keep like Griffin and Max straight. I was like, wait, which one is doing what? Okay, this one has a cigarette. Like, let's pay attention to that. And but otherwise I was like, aren't they the same? No, okay, they're not.
No, and the funniest part is that Yoshi is supposed to look similar to Eiji, but he doesn't really, because there's a scene when Shorter first look at him and he's like, "What, Eiji? He looks like you." And I was like, "What? No, he doesn't."
No, he doesn't.
Shorter, do you need glasses? Shorter, what happened? What's happening to you?
Shorter's very distinctive because it cuts off his mohawk and it's very sad. That's
Yeah, and yeah, he's constantly wearing sunglasses, so he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't actually. We barely don't. I mean, we don't know how he looks.
That's true. I
We
don't.
just see
We
his
see his
glasses.
eyes like very infrequently.
Yeah, we don't even know how sure he looks. Actually, we just know that he's either bald or he has a mohawk. Those are the defining features.
Those are definitely his defining features. But yeah, I mean, generally, I was like, okay, I appreciate that. Like, the NYPD is shown to be diverse. I am here for this. Gangs are divided by race, but also, they don't outright always hate each other. Like, I'm here for that. That feels nice and realistic to me. But there's definitely racist jokes that I'm like, okay, that might have been too far.
Yeah, Bananafish definitely has racism. Like I mentioned, the only time we only truly see Latinos are with they're getting killed, and I know this is. I mean, this is not just my experience. I have had people tell me that it feels triggering that the only times they see Hispanic people it's when they're dead. And
That makes sense.
yeah, and you have all the slurs. You have black people looking like caricatures, basically. So while it gets some things right, it has a lot of nice interracial relationships. You have Max and Eve. You have Ash and Eiji, Nadia and Charlie. It's not free from a lot of racism and racist stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of good and a lot of bad, and I think that's actually how I think of most shoujo manga. To be honest, is like you have the really empowering moments where, like, yes, you got it perfectly, you got like my empowerment perfectly, and then like next page you'll be like, why did you get this so wrong though? Like, why is this so bad? So shoujo manga, it has the best and worst of everything in it. Each story, that's how I feel.
Yeah, basically.
And then the last good and bad thing is, we touched on the abuse and how it is good that it always condemns it earlier. I think the queerness that is present, I think that is also positive in and of itself. The conflation of queerness with abuse, like a lot of the queer characters in this are the ones who perpetuate the abuse because they're creepy pedophiles. That's where it starts to break down and be less good because again, that's the probably one of the very 80s parts of it is, in the 80s there's AIDS and a lot of LGBTQ hate there, and that's not, gay people are not inherently pedophiles. That's the conclusion I must say there.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated because there's such a loaded trope because it's a prejudice that still exists today. And you get a character like Marvin that's specifically described as being gay by Shorter and by Skipper instead of, calling him for what it is, which is a pedophile.
Yeah.
And that never happens again, but once is bad enough and it sets a precedent. So every time you get another pedophile, I can't blame you if that comes to mind again, and yeah, you have the positive, which is Ash and Eiji, but
But that,
the thing is that's more subtle in comparison to that.
Yeah, because Ash and Agee aren't able, like, at least so far, there's no, like, super overt sexualness to it. So there's no positive sexy times, right? Really, but I mean, even though we're only shown, Marvin being creepy, I would say there's a severe lack of presence of women in this manga, and all we are told about Dino is that he's like into little boys, and all the people who come to his restaurant supposedly are also into little boys, and so like that's weird and creepy. And everybody who comes to his restaurant that we know of is male, so there's a lot of conflation there.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, on one hand, it makes sense because, well, Ash is a victim of human trafficking, and he was literally bought by a predator. And of course, he's not gonna be in an environment, in a safe environment. I mean, it makes sense that all these predators are together, linked in the same environment. But it's such a loaded trope to relate queerness with abuse and pedophilia. And while it doesn't, so far it hasn't described them as gay again. It's upsetting to see that and not see any sort of alternative present.
Yeah, that's why it's like Ash and Eiji being the only example of a somewhat positive thing is like, all right, that's not enough. That's no good. This is where it really breaks down.
And what makes things even more complicated is that Bananafish definitely has internalized and weaponized homophobia. Like you hear the F word. I mean, you read the F word a lot. Ash himself uses the F word. You know,
Yeah, they use it a lot by the
he's supposed.
end too. I was like, ah.
I mean, maybe he doesn't use it in the original version, but still, it's not like Ash has the best image of queerness thanks to his abuse. I mean, you have a part with Agee when he's like, when he's telling Agee, you know what, I don't want to send you to Japan anymore. I want you to stay with me. And he rarely, I mean, Ash is not exactly a sweet person, and Agee, and Agee is like, what? Say that again. I want to hear that
Oh
again.
yeah.
And Ash is like, where are you? Are you gay or something? And it's jarring because I mean, that they clearly, I mean, he clearly has feelings for Agee. He loves the boy, but I mean, he separates that from queerness itself. Ash himself has to deal with tons of internalized homophobia, and like you say, there are not sexy times with Ash and Eiji. It's a strong friendship that has romantic undertones, but it's pretty much asexual. It's a sexual relationship thus far, and it makes sense because it gives Ash safety.
Yeah, because yeah, he definitely needs to divorce that in his mind. The only like somewhat sexy time that comes to my mind is there is that moment when they're like hiding out initially with the like three gang members who were like, we stuck by you, boss, after they like blow up the compound or whatever and bust them out. And Ash is in the bath and you get to see his butt, and I was like, oh, scandalous. And Agee like walks in on that, and I was like, Ash, you're purposely showing Agee your butt. Don't lie to me. Like, yeah.
I mean, there's definitely tension and longing between them, but they don't go beyond that. And around that part, there's actually a good example of that. When AG is having this internal debate of who is the real Ash, the Ash who is a killer, or the Ash who gets angry because you tease him with pumpkins. Like, who's the real Ash? He's having this.
Oh yeah, that whole
He's having
pumpkin
this.
story was so weird.
Yeah, and he's having this mental debate, and there's a part when he starts staring at Ash, and he's like, what's happening, right? And AJ says something like, even your eyelashes are pretty blonde. And Ash starts joking, saying, do you want to look the hair down
Oh
there?
yeah.
And and the fact that he even jokes about something like that says a lot of how safe and comfortable AG makes him feel. and Agee plays alone. He's like, okay, I want to see you, right?
And Ash is like, what?
And
No.
yeah, and Ash's reaction is, I mean, this is framed as something comedy. We see a TV Ash. He's like, yikes, what? And in the next panel, we see that the boys that are both boys are embarrassed and flustered, and but Ash is like, what? Get away from me, pervert. It goes to show, I mean, it shows how Ash, as much as Ash trusts Eiji as comfortable as he is, there are certain lines that he's not ready to cross. Ash is the one that started to make the joke. Ash is the one that made the joke. But when AG, as soon as AG play alone, he's like, what? No, too much. Stop, back up.
That's true. It's the one thing that Ash can't finish is the jokes that he starts that are sexual, and then he's like, no, wait, I didn't mean for it to go here. That's a good point. Yeah. Trying to think of other like Ash Agee moments.
They hug a lot, by the way. It's so sweet.
Oh, I guess I wanted to bring up that you mentioned that it's like played for comedic effect. And that was definitely one of the things that I found somewhat jarring reading the manga is that there's so much heavy stuff in here, but then there's a lot of comedy, but then at times it feels somewhat like it breaks the world a little for me, or like it would be like, this seems a little too jokey for me at this moment in time after you've blown up a lot of people and all these things. Like there's just such a tone shift, I think, for that sequence of events where they're like hiding out initially and getting Japanese food and having their whole like, we stuck our fingers up at each other, like don't chop off your finger, Japanese klutz or whatever, those types of things. I was like, I appreciate this humor, but it seems like a little oddly placed here. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be serious all the time. You're gonna die. You're gonna have a mental breakdown like that. You gotta take a moment. And, it honestly, it feels realistic to me that they will try, when they're together, that they will try to joke around things even when maybe they shouldn't be, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're immediately getting threatened. If there's no immediate danger, they will like try to relax. Otherwise, they will have mental breakdowns or something.
Yeah, no, I don't blame them for joking around. It's just like reading it, I was like, all right, this is a little jarring for me.
Yeah, it's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, so those were all the like thematic things that we had written down. I'm sure that some of them will reprise or new ones will come up when we cover the second 42% of the series. But so I wanted to just go a little over, art corner. We mentioned same faciness, but I think there's a lot more going on with the art, and sometimes not a lot more going on with the art, and how you feel about the art in general. And
I think it ruined me. I mean, I have different opinions depending on which volume you're talking about because Yoshida's style changed a lot.
yeah,
He has like three major shifts. First, you have the roundy, extremely 80s looking characters. They are all bulky and round, and they have big eyes and rounder noses. And then she starts, I don't know, refining their art. The characters started to be more slender. Yeah, and that lasts a lot longer, but then everyone starts to be too big, too sharp. We haven't reached that part yet, but that's my less favorite
okay. So like
part.
this middle part is the best.
Yeah, yeah, I like the middle part the best. The last few volumes, yes, that's when everyone looks the same. Everyone has the same hairstyle. Everyone has the same body type. It goes beyond safe face at that point. But I think the first and the second style are, I don't know, they grew on me.
Yeah.
And the backgrounds are not necessarily the best. I mean, they're pretty standard, but the graffitis are somewhat charming to me.
Yeah, there are times. Okay, I'm gonna stick with graffiti. Graffiti is good. There's certainly a lot of graffiti in a way that I'm like, is the New York subway really just like covered in graffiti? Like, I don't know, maybe. I wasn't alive in the 80s. What do I know? But it seemed a little extreme at times, but it was definitely fun to read the little messages that you get, like the Western Ways one. And I was like, oh man, all right. It's also just very stylized. And I think, Yoshida actually, for me, the strongest art was always in sequences where there was no dialogue. She has a lot of pages where, you get a lot of text dumps throughout this. Don't get me wrong. You get a lot of text dumps about like the chemical compounds of Bananafish and like historical background on the Vietnam War and all these things. But then there are just pages where she has no dialogue and it's just characters like staring at something or walking away from something or a train passing by, and I'm like, no, those are the best moments, the quiet moments amongst all the chaos.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of my favorite panels are the action panels as well. Like with the first time Ash and Sing face off, there's a panel where I don't know if you remember, before anything happens, there's a panel where Ash is staring down at Sing and we only see Ash legs, and between Ash legs we see Sing and he looks so small in that part. And with that framing, before anyone does anything, you already know that Sing is no match for Ash. He's insignificant comparing to Ash. You already know he's gonna lose, and when they start to fight, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, so I think that Yoshida is like really good at those framing types of things. Even if backgrounds aren't as strong, like whatever, it's fine. Same faciness, so I can tolerate that.
Yeah, and in the mansion art, you also have those panels with Ash and Eiji. You know that panel when they're in this, when the Ash and Eiji are on their stairs and Ash shoots one dude between the eyes, and I swear, I don't know how, but I swear that scene is in slow mo. I don't know how it's a drawing, but it's in slow mo.
Oh yeah, there were definitely moments where I was like, I feel the cinematic slow motion or whatever of this. Like it's been brought to life in the span of 4 panels, and I don't know how because I'm not an artist, but good job, Yoshida. Yeah, I guess the only other thing in Art Corner that this manga definitely goes through the phase of like Yoshida doesn't really know what she wants, I guess, the characters to look like in the beginning. So there's a little bit of Ash's look really changes throughout the manga. So I wanted to get your take on different Ash Lynx looks. I actually am very fond of initial Ash. That looks like I think I would described him in a tweet as a schlubby high school quarterback for like a football team. Like that's what he looked like to me. You mentioned he was like chunkier and stuff. I was like, yeah. And then by volume 4, he like looks totally different. I'm like, how did my brain accept this? Like, where was I don't know where the dividing line was, but yeah, that's Ash. Sure, why not?
I gotta give some credit to Yoshida because she at least tried to, I don't know, give us some plot reasons for the change. Because I don't know if you noticed, but the first big, the shift starts in the mansion arc when Ash gets that haircut.
Yeah, I did. I was like, I see what you did here, but like, people don't change that much from that, but sure.
Yeah, I forget the name, but originally Ash was based on a tennis player, and then I don't know. I suppose that tennis players aren't, just aren't very fascinated for main characters, so she switched to River Phoenix. Yeah, and Ash is extremely River Phoenix. Like you can literally find panels that are basically redrawns of River Phoenix poses and expressions.
Oh, nice. But I think we should agree that Ash dressing up as a nurse is best version of Ash.
Nurse Barbara.
Nurse Barbara.
That's definitely that's such a powerful Ash. I agree. And by the way, for the anime, there are a lot of art style changes throughout the manga, and for the anime, they pick volume 9, 10, and 11 to base the character redesigns.
Mm.
And I get the feeling they did that. I mean, they say that because it's supposedly that's where the art style stabilized or whatever. But I swear they did that because that's where Ash looks the most, most refined. He looks extremely pretty. Like
Yeah.
that's where Ash looks. Yeah, and also that's where there's Barbara. So suppose that
Yeah,
that also
that's what
factors
influenced it.
into
Yeah.
it.
I love Ash wearing his dumb earring that's worth $300,000. That was a good look. He should have kept that.
Yeah, that was a good look.
Oh, yeah. There were times where I would get lost in Ash's eyes. Like, I'm not saying that they're very elaborate because they're not, but if you stare at them deeply at any time, you're like, his eyes are so snake like they're so killer.
Yeah, Ash is Ash, Ash is really. I mean, he's generally mesmerizing. Even if there's not much. The art style is not particularly elaborate, but the look in his eyes are very striking.
Yeah, no, I think it's more powerful that she's like, I don't need to be elaborate to have you have elaborate feelings. What's up? Like, all I need is this simple art, and you feel lots of things. And I'm like, all right, yeah, you got me. Like, what's up?
Yeah, Ash has some very good close-ups too. When Ash is drawn with an all black background,
Mm.
yeah, he's very enticing in those scenes.
Yeah, lots of black and white usage, even though clearly more. I mean, yeah, morals are pretty gray, I guess, but I think everybody thinks of them in black and white in the manga itself. Like they're all like, well, this is good and this is bad, and I'm gonna live my life like that, you know. But I guess we should move on to some audience questions, which I think we've answered some of them. I'm gonna read them, but we might have already answered them, so we won't answer them again. But I want to acknowledge my listeners because I love them. But yeah, so first one comes from Instagram, and it had a lot. Again, I think we talked about most of them, but it was from Blarg Mangoes, which is a great handle. And, they're like, what can you talk about? This series has drugs, gangs, rape, war, corrupted politicians, child pornography. I know it's got a lot going on. That's all I have to say about all that. So they say if you can dedicate some time digging into certain characters, that would be amazing. I think we did that. Some possible topics to discuss: comparison of leadership between gangs, overcoming abuse, relationships, telling the difference between a healthy and abusive relationship, thoughts and/or comparisons between the anime and manga. Yeah, so I think we've touched a little bit on all of those things, or more than a little bit. But I think this is the space lots of people want to know about changes from anime to manga. So, and I have not watched it, but I know that you are. So do you want to elaborate on some more of the changes, likes and dislikes so far? Only like 3 episodes of the anime have come out so far. 4 maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, just right. Yeah, the biggest change is the look. It's different. It's extremely different in some ways, and in others, it's pretty similar to the manga. It's a modernized look, but to me, it still have some 80s vibes. And yeah, that's pretty much the biggest change because so far the story is pretty faithful to the manga. I mean, they leave out some outdated stuff. You don't have racist jokes or some extremely dated lines. And one of the things that I like the most it's how people of color look in the anime. You have literally all shades of skin and hair tone for all races, not just for black people, but literally for all races. They all look so
Oh,
good.
that's good. That's definitely a good update to have. I guess I'm trying to think of what I've heard about anime to manga. So, do you have any thoughts on the pacing? Because I believe I've seen people say that at least for the first 2 episodes, I saw people complain that they thought it was a little bit too fast for them. Do you agree or no?
I don't know. I see where that's coming from, but to me, this is extremely banana fish. A lot of things happen all the time. You know, to me, the pacing. I mean, it's not too fast for me, but then again, I'm already pretty familiar with the story, so it's not like I have to follow new things with the anime. So yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask this.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, to me, reading that and now having read the first 11 volumes of the manga, I'm like, I don't know. The pacing of this manga seems frenetic in and of itself most of the time. So, like, how can the anime, I mean, really be too fast? I don't know. But yeah, so like at Zawa113CJ on Twitter had also asked like what changes from the manga do you like most so far? Least do you have a least favorite change from the manga to anime?
I think I already say my favorite changes, and I think my least favorite change is with a particular scene with Ash. You know when he gets gun raped when he's with in jail,
Yes.
and there's a scene after that where Max is concerned, and the doctor is like, of course he's not okay, right?
Mm.
And the anime made changes that I think I understand why they made them, but it felt like it didn't have enough weight. And
Mm.
to me, one of the best things of Bananafish is that even if it throws all sort of mess up things at you, it always finds a way to give them weight, to make them feel real, to make you understand that these things have real consequences for these characters.
Mm.
And I mean, Ash himself struggled with a lot of PTSD and the abuse he went through. I mean, even if he has moments when he acts like he is extremely strong, he breaks down. It has an effect on him. And in the anime, I know it's just one scene so far, but you don't get the sense that, I mean, it could have been done better.
That's fair. I'm sure we will check in again on anime to manga comparisons in the second episode, in which at least a few more episodes will have come out. So perhaps that will be more informative. But yeah. So at Saucy Dames on Twitter asks, IDK, how long y'all have been in the game? But what was the old time Bananafish fandom scene like? Because so far I've only found one decent fan site, and it's in French. Also, the translation of the anime slash manga slash and localization, etc. Your thoughts? Who do you want dubbing? That's a lot of series of questions. Okay, so I think we've established that neither of us has been in the Bananafish fan scene for terribly long, but perhaps you know of more fan sites. Because my impression is that Bananafish, when released back in the day in English, was not the biggest hit that Viz has ever seen. So it wouldn't shock me if there was not a strong contingent. I mean, there was probably a contingent of fans. I don't know where they would have hung out because I think that there wouldn't have been a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I honestly don't know much about that. What I have heard, what I have read is that supposedly when Banana Fish came out in the 80s, it supposedly was huge in Japan. And yeah, and the Ash was a pretty popular character, and I know that there were a lot of the Jinjis of Ash and Eiji back in the 90s. In, yeah, and I personally discovered Banana Fish in a forum. I always went to the Shojo section, and there were a series of manga that everyone, and I mean literally everyone, recommend. And those were Please Say My Air, Vasara, Mars, Banana Fish, Glass Mask, and if you were informed, you were gonna hear about Banana Fish. And basically what everyone say about it is that this is super good but it's super dark. The protagonist is a victim of child abuse, and it's super gay, but it's actually low key. No, it's actually yeah, they actually say that it's super gay. And that there was a Japanese journalist, and that's supposed to be Agee, and he's not a journalist
Yeah,
actually.
that's
Just whatever. Yeah, and there's mafia and there's drugs. That's basically what you hear about Banana Fish, and a lot. Yep, that's pretty much all I can say about it. And I haven't really participated in any fandom until now. the anime has basically, there's a Bananafish fandom in 2018. Can you believe that?
I know. I was about to say, I feel like it's going to get better now because the anime will bring it to more people. And again, Viz has chosen to reprint it. So lots of people are clamoring for it. And it definitely seems like the type of series that once you do know about it and you've heard the hype from the few fans, like I think it's going to spread. I think it's going to be a big thing, hopefully. Because it's a really good manga. It's very compelling, despite all its problems. Like, it is super fun to read. I don't know if fun is the right word. You definitely feel like you will want to keep reading it because you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? You know, sort of deal. Like, how can it get any crazier than this? How does Ash escape? I don't know.
Yeah, Bananafish is extremely problematic, but it's also extremely compelling. And you have those parts when, when something is funny, but it's also extremely sad, and you laugh, but you also are dead inside at the same
Yeah.
time. You get a lot. You get a lot of that with Ash, and like in the recent art, the art from Volume 10 when he's at the mental facility, and he sees that song, and
Oh,
it's super
yeah.
raunchy, and it's a good scene, and it's hilarious. But then you're thinking, how does Ash know that song? Where did he learn that? With what
Oh, yeah.
purpose
Well,
did he learn that? And it gets disturbing real fast.
that's definitely him weaponizing all the terrible things that he has endured over his lifetime. So I guess I'm hoping that the Bananafish fandom blows up. I think it already is. I think once people start getting their Viz reprints and more of the anime comes out, it will be a big deal. That'll be fun.
I think it's already starting to be a big deal. I mean, this is gonna sound like humble brag, and I'm sorry, I apologize, but when I tweet about banana fish, say last year, I barely got any response. But nowadays, I can get into the Twitter right now, and tweet banana fish. I want that. That's it, and I'm gonna get over 100 likes, and it's crazy every time. But a new episode comes up of the anime, and you tweet about pictures or whatever, my notifications explode. There's so many people asking what's this, or liking, or I don't know. It's so crazy. I have never had so many interaction on Twitter. It definitely blows up, and I know I have mutuals that are also going through the same.
Yeah, no, I would say that I would definitely point to your Twitter as living proof that Bananafish fandom is alive and well and surging in the North America. And yeah, I think it was very big in Japan. I just question whether it was ever big in America until now. I think it's going to blow up in America. It's already blowing up. Marion is leading the charge.
Yeah.
Bananafish fandom.
Yeah, and the third episode had the jail kiss
Oh
scene. So
yeah.
you bet everyone was all over that. I think that this is the episode where Banana Fish really blew up.
I mean, I saw that scene in GIF form, and I was like, that is a very elaborate kiss. All right.
No, I'm really enjoying the anime interpretation of Ash and Eiji. By the way,
Oh yeah.
it's so good. It's so good. Like you can feel that the director Utsumi is a big fan of them. You can feel the passion she has for the story and for them in particular. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that part. It's funny, but it's also like, please don't come into this story expecting wholesome gay kisses and stuff. You're gonna regret that a lot. Banana Fish is not like that. This is not
Oh yeah.
representative of the Banana Fish
Mm.
experience. People, please. There's a lot of pain here. We all want to die while we read Banana Fish. I mean, we are very entertained, but we also want to die. So please don't get fooled
Don't
by
get
this.
fooled by beware newbies.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy content.
All right. Well, last listener question that we got was from @CrusherJones on Twitter, and it was just, how awful was it when they switched the volume colors of the Viz version from the awesome severe black and white to, quote, post Taco Bell brown, and I definitely had a mixture of both versions. So they definitely use the severe black and yellow for the flipped versions, and then the unflipped ones are like a weird brown yellow. That's I would say that neither of them probably looks very good on your shelf. Might look a little jarring, but yeah, definitely the post Taco Bell brown is less appealing to me. I don't how do you, I know that you
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I like how Pool at least try it to keep the Bananafish signature color palette, which is the black and yellow, and they at least use some color with illustrations in the cover. I mean, if I have to choose between looking at the Pool version and at whatever they're trying to do in the 2004 version, I will definitely choose the Pool version.
yeah. And I know that you had written in one of your articles that, that color palette is very significant to the story because those colors represent like poisonous creatures and all those things, which is definitely relevant to the effects that the drug have and the ideology of certain people and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty representative of Banana Fish because I mean, basically, you find dangerous creatures in nature that have those colors, and they might not kill you, but they will definitely incapacitate you. That's why when we look at those color palettes, they give you an impression of danger. They cause you anxiety, and it's also pretty good color palette to indicate obsession. And obsession is definitely big in Banana Fish. And Banana Fish is all about obsession, and it's a poisonous word. So yeah, it's pretty representative of it.
All right, so now we're gonna name our favorite. Now that we're done with the questions, we're gonna name our favorite Ash and Agee moments. This is in lieu of normal shipping corner. We will do a shipping corner in the second episode when all the ships are game and all the moments are game. We know what happens, but just I think we've mentioned some favorite Ash and Agee moments, but there's like a lot. So Marion, would you have any that really stick out to you?
Okay, the moment where they flip each other off to me is extremely
Like
good.
that's the height of
It's
Ash and
definitely.
Eiji's relationship.
I mean, I I have two moments actually. It to me are extremely representative of the relationship, and one is the part where they flip each other off, and they are idiot boys together, and the other one is when Ash gets free from the mental facility, and AG is like, you know what, I don't want to fight you. I'm just, and he hugs him, and he's like, I'm so happy that you're fine. And Ash is hesitant at first, but then he just lets himself be loved, and he and he hugs AG as well. Those are pretty nice moments to me, and are pretty representative of their relationship.
Yeah, and definitely the hugging moment was like, oh, I was like, oh, you're definitely a couple. Like Eiji's like, let's not fight, Ash. Like, I don't want to upset you, so I'm just gonna give you this hug instead. I'm like, oh yes, that's the good stuff right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, I call them banana husbands for a reason. They they definitely they can give you merit vibes at some point, and then at the next moment they're being absolutely silly and idiotic together, and it's a definitely close relationship. That's how you know it's love, when you can flip your significant other off like it's nothing. That's love.
Yeah, and I definitely like I really actually do appreciate AG being like I don't like just stopping the conversation and being like I don't want to fight anymore. Whatever. It doesn't matter, Ash. You almost just like I thought you were dead. Like the news reported you were dead and now you're not. So I'm just going to hug you. We're going to take a little pause in this this fight that we're having and we're just going to hug. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's nice."
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And it also says a lot about how, they really care about each other, and how the relationship they have with each other, it's so nice. It's so good. It's so organic. I don't know. It's a pretty healthy relationship, and that's definitely something that Ash needs in his life.
That's true. It's like I don't want to say it's the only healthy relationship because I think some of his gang members and like his friendship with Shorter, where they were okay. But you know, Agee is a whole nother level of. It's also the moment where like Ash is breaking down, and Agee just like holds him, and then they fall asleep together. And then Ash wakes up and is like, "Why is Agee here?" But like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of significant relationships. He has a good relationship with Max. He has a good relationship with Shorter and his gang. But you know, there's always. I mean, Ash always has walls with him, and only with AE does he let go completely. You know.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember now. One of my favorite moments is, you know, his Ash's gang. Ash tells his gang that he wants to sleep for 2 hours. So wake him up in 2 hours. And the gang is like, oh no, we're super like afraid to wake him up because Ash sucks when you wake him up. He's super mean and all these things. And then Eiji's like, well, it's been 2 hours. I'm gonna wake Ash up. And then Ash is like, I wouldn't say nice to Eiji, but he's not overly mean. He's just like a little grumpy because he just woke up, and that's how people are when they wake up. And they're all like, "Oh my god, he's not like murdering Eiji. How is this possible?"
There's a person who has actually lost his teeth because
Oh yeah,
just because he was in charge of waking Ash up, and then AJ goes and slaps Ash, and everyone's like, "Is this crazy? He wants you to die! Oh my god!" And I just wake up and
yeah,
glares,
glare.
glares, and then that's it. He's grumpy and that's it, but he doesn't say anything, you know.
Yeah, and I liked, you know, any moments where Eiji was like, I can't keep up with all this English, Ash. I'm just gonna like rant at you in Japanese. And Ash is like, stop speaking gibberish at me. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you know that's actually pretty relatable to me because English is not my first language, and I definitely have had my moments where it's like, okay, wait, can you speak slower? What I don't get what's happening here.
Yeah, although in the manga, I thought, I don't know, maybe I just misremember, but I thought it was like somewhat inconsistent how much or how well Eiji understood English and how well he could speak it. Because at points I was like, he just seems to be speaking like perfectly fine English, and then other points it would be broken a little bit, and I was like, I'm not getting a good read on this. Like I thought some volumes it was just like completely
Yeah,
clean.
I kind of wonder if that's kind of like the same issue it has with the curses, that sometimes they censor the curses
Mm.
and sometimes they don't. I wonder if it's a localization issue
Yeah,
because
possibly.
watching the watching the anime, I actually wonder, does he even talks in broken English? Is he even supposed to speak in broken English in the first place? I mean, I'm not sure, but it might be a localization issue.
Yeah. Yeah, because I definitely feel like it was inconsistent. So probably just another localization issue. But yeah, ooh, they also had that like, you know, these are all scenes that are like kind of around the same time, but there's a scene where they're also like eating Japanese food. I think it's actually not in the first scene where they're eating Japanese food, but then Eiji's like, eat natto or whatever for breakfast, which is like infamously, I think, very divisive in Japan. Like some people love it, and other people are like, "This is the
Yeah.
most disgusting thing ever." And Ash is definitely in the "this is the most disgusting thing ever" camp.
Yeah, he never gets over it. He never gets over it,
Oh
by the
yeah,
way.
does it come back? Oh my god, I hope it comes back.
Yeah, it's a recurring joke.
Yes, perfect. That's so good. But yeah, are there any other moments you wanted to mention or any other final thoughts you've had about this first half before we wrap up?
Mostly, maybe, I mean, there were things that made a really strong impression on me when I read Bananafish last year, like the queerness being associated with abuse and and other kinds of mess up things, because I remember them being worse than they actually were. Like, I'm rereading the manga now. I'm actually thinking, hey, they actually handled this very well. That it's actually Bananafish is a lot better than I remember handling abuse and trauma. I always remember Bananafish framing them as the traumatizing and horrifying experiences that they are. But now that I'm rereading it again, it just I used to have the impression that it deals with them worse than they actually do, but it's actually pretty. I mean, it deals with trauma and sexual abuse in the consequences the sexual abuse has on Ash. I think it's pretty neat how it deals with it in a way that's true with Ash character without undermining how horrifying those experiences are, how scarring they are, because you had a lot of different phrases. Like there's a part when Ash is with Max and he talks about disassociating when Dina raped him, and he says that so casually, but it says a lot of how he deals with his pain, and then there are those moments from Eiji's point of view where it reveals that Ash actually has a lot of troubles. I mean, he has problems sleeping well. He has recurring nightmares. Basically, he calls out for his mom and so on. It's clearly something that never truly leaves him. And even if he makes the effort of, put a front and be casual about it, it has a strong effect on his life.
Yeah, I guess I would say Ash is good at compartmentalization, perhaps. And Agee is the one character that he's like, I don't have to compartmentalize with Agee. I can just let that all come out. I can unlock it from the box that I've buried deep within myself, the place where I bury everything. I can let that show with Agee.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much, I think.
Well, we can end here. I think that's a good ending point. We've talked a lot. We still have a whole other episode. This has been the first 11 volumes of Bananafish. I guess we didn't establish where exactly that ends, but I believe that is the intro of the new character of Blanca. So I know like 5 pages of, that's his name, right? Blanca? I think so. I don't know. That guy who's come to like, he has been successfully stalking Ash in a way that other people haven't. Ash has just been like, I feel a presence, but I can't find it.
Yeah, we are leveling up here.
Yeah. So we're going to find out more about Blanca next time. But until then, thank you for listening to this episode of Shojo Tell. If you have any comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns, you can email us at shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on this episode if it's about this episode in particular. It's shoujoandtell.com/bananafish1. You can also tweet us any random shoujo thoughts you have or whatever. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter. You can also Facebook, also at Shojo and Tell, and Instagram and Tumblr. Just look up at Shojo and Tell on all the things. Marion, where can people find your work on the internet? Where can they find all the writings that I have referenced frequently throughout this episode?
I have a blog called Takushi Road, and it's takushiroad.com. That's it. And I'm on Twitter. I'm eccentric Marion on Twitter, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, if you want any Bananafish things, Marion has definitely been tweeting them, so you will find them.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and so if any of you are listening on Stitcher or you like the iTunes, if you could leave a review of this podcast there, that would be super swell. It would make my day, truly. Like, I'm not even joking. It would also help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. Obviously, next time we'll be back for the final 8 volumes of Bananafish. To be clear, that's volumes 12 to 19. So I can only guess how this will end because, again, all the literary references of Salinger and Hemingway, those are depressing dudes. Nothing good ever comes of these literary things. That's all I'm saying. So we'll find out, though, I guess, next episode. Until then, bye.